So Arnold, in August of 1775, will make his way to Cambridge. And at Cambridge, he's going to meet a fairly well-known fellow by the name of George Washington, who is now the commander-in-chief, having been named back in June by the Continental Congress. George Washington will meet with Arnold, and he likes him. He sees that this is a man who has a clear vision. And Arnold's talking about the importance of Canada in relation to British strategy. And so let me then just talk about British strategy as it's going to develop for just a minute. In 1775, it's clear to Arnold and others, and even Washington, that the British are going to try to retake New England. That New England is the center of the rebellion at this point. It's only spreading southward at a very slow rate into the other colonies. British strategy, as it will evolve into 1776 and 1777, you move British and Hessian forces into Canada. You take the port of New York City to the south, 350 miles south of Montreal. You move one force out of Canada to Albany. You move another force up the Hudson River to Albany. They meet. They will sweep eastward into New England. You knock out the rebels in New England. You use the British Navy to sort of soften up points like Boston and other coastal towns, and that's how you end the rebellion. Arnold has already written to Congress and said, this is what the British are going to do. We need this territory. We need to be thinking about Quebec province as a 14th colony in rebellion. In fact, Arnold said, if you can't get anybody else, I'll be glad to lead the forces into Canada. Again, no military experience. And so what will happen is Washington will ultimately, on the advice of Schuyler, will select Arnold to lead one of two detached forces marching into Canada in the fall of 1775 to take Montreal and Quebec and to claim Quebec province as the 14th colony in rebellion. The story of Arnold's march to Quebec is a most harrowing kind of a story. He will organize a force with the help of Washington of about 1,100. Only about 500 to 600 of them will actually get through the Maine wilderness. They march through the Maine wilderness. They march up into the area of the Chaudière River. They head for Quebec. The estimate was it would take them 6 weeks to get there. The estimate was it would take them 3 weeks to get there. It took them 6 weeks to get there. Along the way, soldiers, some are starving to death. It's a very, very harrowing experience, but Arnold will make the breakthrough to the Plains of Abraham outside the walled city of Quebec in the middle of November of 1775. Meantime, the other force, under a General Richard Montgomery, a former British captain, will capture Montreal, will link up with Arnold outside of Quebec City. And now we've captured Montreal, we got to take Quebec. We take Quebec, we have captured this colony, we'll bring it in as the 14th colony in rebellion. Well, it doesn't work out very well in the end. One of the problems is that those American troops that had made it in the march to Canada had limited terms of service, and their service terms were up at the end of 1775. And so that army was going to begin to disappear, moving back into New England on the first day of 1776. So under the cover of a driving snowstorm on the cover of a driving snowstorm on the last day, December 31st of 1775, Montgomery and Arnold try to take Quebec City. It is a disaster. The force under Montgomery is driven back by cannon fire. They try to go in through the lower town to make it into the upper town. Montgomery's force is driven backward. Montgomery is killed by cannon fire. He's out of it. Arnold's detachment, coming in from another point into the lower town to sweep into the upper town to capture the city, They really hardly get beyond the first barrier. Arnold didn't get beyond the first barrier. These barriers that were built to block the streets, to stop the Americans from invading the city. A ricocheting musket ball drives into the calf of Arnold's left leg. He's bleeding profusely, and the decision will be made against his will to take him back into the field where a temporary hospital has been set up in order to save his life. A very good warrior by the name of Daniel Morgan would take over, but he too would be captured that particular morning. The whole thing's a disaster. More than half the force is captured. Montgomery's dead, Arnold's seriously wounded, and Canada, in this case Quebec province, is not taken. What do we do? Arnold does the best he can. He says, my assignment has really become, and I'm quoting, making brick without straw. And during the winter and into the spring of 1776, he, amazingly enough, will keep up a light siege of the walled city of Quebec. And the governor, Guy Carleton's a smart guy. He's not going to come out and challenge Arnold just in case Arnold does have the resources to defeat him. And so the British maintain the city. Arnold's stuck on the outside. Ultimately, Arnold will be recalled by an individual general by the name of David Worcester, an old friend of sorts from his days in New Haven. Arnold has to pull back, and it's the beginning of a major retreat out of Canada, a very, very sad and destructive story for the Americans, because the British forces start to reach and to relieve Quebec in May of 1776, and by the end of June of 1776, the American forces in Canada have been driven all the way back to Fort Ticonderoga. A disaster. Arnold did the best he could to make a stand, but there weren't enough straw wasn't there to make the bricks come together, and he's out.